Begin today the Gemara on Daf Chav Gimel, right at the beginning of the Yamud, Ravina Omar. So this is actually in the middle of a sugya. The Gemara is going to answer the contradiction that it brought up in the beginning of Chav Beis Amud Beis. In the Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek, it said the halacha that one should not place his animals in an inn where there are goyim because we suspect that they will then have a relation with the animal, and therefore you're causing them to be over. It's lifnei iver. But on the other hand, it brought a brayse that said that you're allowed to buy animals from goyim to bring a carbon, and we're not concerned that there was a relation reva, nirva, which is possible for a carbon. So what's the difference? So before the Gemara brought an answer that was in the name of Rav, that he said that when it comes to the animals that a goy owns himself, he doesn't want to behave this way with his animal because then it ends up causing a harm, a damage to his animal. That's the pshat the Gemara said before. Ravina gives another answer to this contradiction. Ravina says, Lo kasha. There's no contradiction. Ha lechatchila and ha diyavet. Our Mishnah is telling you what the halacha is lechatchila, that we are suspicious of a guy's behavior, and therefore lechatchila do not place your animal in an inn with goyim. But then the brayse that says that you could buy animals from goyim for a carbon, what it's saying is that b'di'evet, even if you did place your animal there, and there's a concern, there would be a concern that he had a relation with the animal, but b'di'evet, we're not choshish to this extent, and if you bought it from the guy, you could use it for a carbon. So the gzeira of Chazal, there's a chiluk between lechatchila and b'di'evet. Now, we know taimre, from where do we know to say such a concept? The shani ben lechatchila ben b'di'evet. That when Chazal are concerned for this, but there's still a difference to what extent. If it's lechatchila, where they say that try to prevent this, to avoid this happening, and b'di'evet. And the b'di'evet they say that it's okay. So the source is because the Tanan we learned in our Mishnah, it said lo tisyachid isha imoim, that a woman should not remain alone with a guy because they are suspected of arayas, so that she'll expose herself in a place that they'll have relations with her. Now the question on this is, it says in the Mishnah, ha'isha shanech misha b'dei oivdei kechavim. A woman that was captured by goyim. So now the question is whether she can go back and live with her husband, because she was amongst goyim and they may have had a relation with her, which then she would be forbidden to be with her husband. It actually depends if her husband is a Yisrael or a Kohen. If her husband is a Yisrael, so then if she willingly had a relation with them, then she can't go back to her husband, the Ratzin. But if it's a Kohen, then even if it was Ba'ainis, she may not go back to live with her husband. So the Mishnah here says, Al Yedei Mamain, if the reason she was captured was because of a money matter, that the Goyim were trying to collect money from her or from her husband, and they're using her for ransom in order to get the money they want. So then Muteres L'Baila, she's allowed to go back to her husband. But Al Yedei Nefashis, if they captured her because they want to kill her, nothing to do with money, then Asura L'Baila. Then we're concerned that the Goyim, and then if she did get released, but we are concerned that the Goyim had a relation with her and she'll be Asur to her husband. So what do we see here? In the first part of this Mishnah, it says that if it was Al Yedei Mamain, if she was captured and she was living amongst the Goyim, but they had her in their possession for a money matter, then she's allowed to go back to her husband. Why? Didn't we say that a goyim are chashud ala arayis, and therefore a woman should not be secluded with goyim? So el alav shmamino. So don't we have to say that from here we can learn that shani lom ben lechatchila l'diyevet. There's a difference between lechatchila and b'diyevet. Lechatchila we say that a Jewish woman should not remain alone amongst goyim because of this concern that they may defile her. But b'diyevet, if it happened that she was living amongst them, they captured her, that we're not chayshish for this, and she can go back and live with her husband. So the Gemara says, Mimai. How do you know to prove this point, that this is the basis of this Mishnah here? The difference between lechatchila and b'diyevet. Perhaps I can tell you that when Chachamim make a gzeira before regarding the animals, that don't place it amongst goyim, that concern is lechatchila and b'diyevet as well. That you wouldn't be allowed to buy the animals to use it for a carbon as well. There's no reason to be mechalik between lechatchila and b'diyevet. Now, over here regarding the case of this woman that was captured, why over here are we saying that if she was captured because of a money matter, that then she can go back to her husband? Here, there's a different reason. The reason why we say that in such a case she can go back to her husband because the guy that captured her is afraid to touch her because then he won't get his money. He's afraid that if the Yid sees that what he did to his wife, he's not going to pay her the money. He's not going to pay him the money. That's why in the case of money, we say that there's a svara here to say that there's a reason why the guy would not touch her. But if not for that reason, the concern that we have l'chatchila would apply b'diavad as well.
What's the svara?
That he wants to make sure that he gets paid money, so he's not going to touch her. If they capture her, hey, the Gemara is going to explain. Let's see. Taida, and I'll preview that that's the point here. The Ketani Seifa, because the Mishnah makes clearly this distinction, and the Mishnah says that if she was captured, and they're not out to try to collect any money from her husband, they're capturing this woman in order to kill her, so in such a case, she'll be asa to her husband. So what do you see from this? That over here, she's asa even b'diavad. Why? Because in a case where they captured her for nefashis, because they're looking to kill her, and they're not concerned about what the husband's going to think about what they did to his wife, so in such a case, they will defile her, they will have a relation with her, and therefore she comes back to her husband, she'll be asa. And the Taisus here actually says an additional svara, that if this is talking about a case where the husband is a Yisrael, there's even a concern that she had a relation with them with her consent. And the reason is because if her life is in danger, she's looking to find favor in their eyes, she may try to do things that will appease them in order to save her life. So therefore there's even a chash that it was beratzen, and she'll be also to her husband. But in a case where it was for money, so in this case, the captors, the goyim, they're afraid to do something that will stop their ability to collect the money. The Yid will say, you did this to my wife, I'm not paying you a penny. So in such a case, we say that it's not going to be, that she's not going to be also to her husband. But therefore, there's no raya from here to the point of the answer that Avinu said to make a distinction between l'chatchila and b'diavad. The Gemara concludes, V'su loy midi. There's nothing else to be said on this matter. This is the correct pshat in that Mishnah, the difference between money, when she's captured for money or for nefashis, and the point there is not about l'chatchila and b'diavad. Okay, so the Gemara doesn't refute the pshat of Ravina, but the raya that he tried to bring from this other Mishnah in Ksubis, that raya, the Gemara says, is not a raya. Another answer for the stira that we're dealing with. Again, the stira between our Mishnah, where it says not to place your animals in an inn of Goyim, because we are suspicious of them regarding arayas, and the brayso that says that you're allowed to buy animals from Goyim for karbonis, and we're not suspicious that there was any revia that it was used in this way. Rapadas gives another answer, like Kashi, it's not a contradiction, it's actually a machlekes. Ha Rab Eliezer and Ha Rabbanan. It's a machlekes between Rab Eliezer and Rabbanan about this. The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, Gabi Paras Chatas, regarding the Para Duma, that's also called the Paras Chatas. Rabbi Eliezer says, Eino nikachas meno evde kechavim. You can't buy the Para Duma from a guy. But for Chachamim matirin. However, Chachamim say that it is allowed to buy the Para Duma from a guy. Or machshirin. It's another girsa that Ishainim here say, that they're machshir if you buy the Para Duma from a guy. Says the Gemara, my love, what's the argument here? The point that we're talking about. The Rabbi Eliezer savar chashin l'revia. Rabbi Eliezer, he is the Tana of our Mishnah that said that we're concerned that the Goyim had a relation with this animal, and therefore you can't buy the paraduma from a guy. Rabbanan savri. However, Rabbanan disagree with this whole thing. Loi chashin l'revia. They're not concerned for revia, and therefore you can buy the paraduma from a guy, and you could also place your animals in the inn where there are Goyim. We're not concerned for the inn of arayas. This is the opinion of Rapidas that Taisus brought up in the beginning of the Perek. I mentioned it in the Mishnah, that is the basis of why today we're not chayshish for this Indian of having your animals in the place of where Goyim are, because according to Rapidas, the Chachamim disagree b'chlal with this entire concern. We're not chayshish Goyim that for Reviyah. And that's the sources here, this Mishnah in Masech Para. The Gemara asks now on this pshat, here the Gemara is going to go through a few different options trying to say that it's possible to explain the machlekes of Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan regarding paraduma differently, not based on this concept of revia. Says the Gemara, Mimai, how do you know that this is the pshat? Perhaps everybody, Chachamim, Rabbi Eliezer, agree that when it comes to buying an animal for the paraduma from a guy, there is no concern about revia. Whether because of the reason that Rav said before, because a guy with his own animal that he owns does not want to do such things, or because of the reason that Ravina said before, that b'diavad we're not chayshish for it, everybody agrees we're not chayshish. So then why is Rabbi Eliezer saying not to buy a paraduma from a guy? Like Rav Yudah Marav said, the Amar Rav Yudah Marav, that there's a unique thing regarding a paraduma, that the hiniach aleyan uda shel sakin pasla, that by a paraduma, because it says in the pasuk ashaloi Allah aleh oil, it could be nothing, no yoke, nothing that the behemoth even carry, even the lightest thing. So if you place a bundle of bags or sacks that are empty, and it's not doing any work really, it's just sitting on the animal, it's going to passel it for being a paraduma. Now, egla, when it comes to the egla rufa, which is used in a case where a person that's found dead and we don't know who the murderer is, and there the Torah says you have to bring a calf and cut off its neck, and there by the egla rufa, it also, over there, the pasuk uses a different term. Over there it says, ashaloi mashach, loy mashcha ba'el. So, atcha timshach, if you place something on this egla, and then it walked with it, then it's going to passel this egla to be used for the egla rufa. Okay, but what you see over here is that when it comes to a paraduma, there's a very, has to be a paraduma that wasn't used at all. You didn't even place anything onto it, even without it walking. So therefore we can say the argument between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim when it comes to buying a paraduma from a guy is as follows. Marsav, Rabbi Eliezer holds cheshina. We're concerned you're buying it from a guy that he wasn't careful and he placed something on top of the animal, so it passled it. But however, the Chachamim say that even when you're buying it from a guy, we're not concerned that the guy passled it by placing something onto the animal. That's what the machlokes is about. But it has nothing to do with the subject we're discussing here, revia, that the guy may have had a relation with this animal. Huh? Again? Yid understands that this is a paraduma. Here, look what the Gemara says now, even regarding a guy. Says the Gemara, you can't say that this is the basis of the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, that the guy may have placed something on the animal and passed it of being fit for a paraduma. Because mishum niche porte loy mafsetuve, just for the little convenience that he had a bag that he wanted to take off from himself and place it onto the animal for a moment, just for that little convenience, he's not going to lose so much money. The paraduma to sell to Yidden, even the guy understands that this paraduma is extremely valuable. There's no reason to be concerned that the guy placed in it the udda shel sakim, some bags on it. So therefore, that's not the machlokes. So therefore, the Gemara goes back to what Rav Pedos suggested. The machlokes over here is whether we're concerned by a guy for revia or not. But now the Gemara asks on that as well. If so, hachanami, Rav Pedos' pshat that says that the concern is for revia, leme that mishum hana porte lemaf setuve, that for him to have a relation with this paraduma, for that little hana, he's not ready to lose the big amount of money that he could make on selling this paraduma to Yidden. So even if Rabbi Eliezer is concerned for revia, but not regarding paraduma, it would seem that by paraduma, a guy wouldn't want to lose that much money. So the Gemara says that's actually not true. Hasam, when it comes to the concern of revia, it's different than just placing down some bags on the paraduma. Yitzrei toikvai, because over here he has such a strong Yetzer Hara that he can't overcome it. And that exactly is the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say that he could overcome it, and they were not chayshish. Or b'chlal, the Gemara said before that there's the svara to say that according to Chachamim, we're not chayshish b'chlal for the reasons the Gemara already said before. But Rabbi Eliezer doesn't hold to those reasons, and Rabbi Eliezer says Yitzrei Teikva, he has a strong Yetzer Hara, and he'll lose all his money. Taisus over here actually says regarding the svara of Yitzrei Teikva, before the Gemara said that a guy owns his own animal, he's not going to have a relation with it because he doesn't want to harm or damage the quality of his animal. So over there we see that the Yitzrei Taikveh doesn't apply. All of a sudden here the Gemara is saying, the svara of Yitzrei Taikveh, that he has such a strong Yetzer Hara that he'll do this even though he'll lose an exorbitant amount of money. So Tais says the answer is because over here he thinks to himself that he'll conceal this from Yidden. They won't know that he did this. And therefore he's saying that he has a strong Yetzer Hara and then I'll sell it to Yidden as well. But he doesn't realize that the Yidden know about this gufa, and therefore Yidden are not going to buy the paraduma from a guy. That's why over here Yitzrei Taikveh applies.
If even with the all, you have simonim like the hair
could be
stand up, and also the eyes run around. Chachami know this, and they bottle the sale.
Correct. Okay, now the Gemara suggests, but there's still another pshat that maybe we could say the machlokes is between Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim, not the pshat of Rav Pedos, that they're arguing about this point of revia. In fact, the Gemara v'dilma maybe the kula amalech hashinah l'revia. Maybe everybody agrees that the issue here is not revia. But v'hachayin time of the Rabbi Eliezer. The reason Rabbi Eliezer says not to buy a paraduma from a guy is actually based on a pasuk. Because the Tani Shila, my time of the Rabbi Eliezer, Because the pasuk says, Daber al bnei Yisrael v'yikchu elecha. So when it says here in the pasuk by paraduma v'yikchu elecha, you should take the paraduma. So the Gemara darshans it is a different way how you could pronounce the word v'yikchu. And what it means is bnei Yisrael yikachu ve'ein ha'ovdei kechavim yikachu. The word yikchu simply is referring to the buyer, that you should buy. The Yidden are going to buy or take the paraduma. But the Gemara darshans yikachu referring to the seller, the one that's causing you to buy. Who should be the one that causes you to buy? Meaning, who's really the seller? The Yid. Bnei Yisrael have to be the one yikachu that is selling the paraduma, and not a guy. That's the source. So therefore, this is a unique din only regarding para aduma, not regarding any other karbanis. And the issue is not about reviyah, that the guy may have had a relation with the animal. That's not what it's about. It's a pasuk. And the Chachamim disagree with this drasha. So the Gemara says in this pshat, lo yisol kedaitach. No, you can't say that this is the only basis for what Rabbi Eliezer says. Because then, in the end of that Mishnah, it says, V'chein haya Rabbi Eliezer paisel b'chol karbanis kulan. Rabbi Eliezer said regarding other karbanis as well, that you should not buy the animals from goyim. So by other karbanis, it doesn't say this pasuk v'yichu elecha. So it must be v'yisol kedaitach kedetani shila. So bishleim b'para ksev bakicha. By the paradum, it says this term v'yikchu, and we darshan yikachu, that you have to buy it from a yid. But ela kula karbanis kicha ksevu. Does it say the term kicha? It doesn't say this term. So therefore we know that it must be that Rabbi Eliezer is saying not to buy even any carbon from a guy because of the chashash of reviyah. Which is, in other words, Rabbi Eliezer is the Tana of our Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek. And the Chachamim is the Tana of the Braisa that we quoted before, that we're not concerned for reviyah. Like the Pshat of Rapidos. Okay, but now the Gemara, however, still pushes further and says that maybe the Dilmeh, maybe I could say that there's still another point over here about this machlekes. So now the Gemara basically here now, it came to the conclusion that it must be that Rabbi Eliezer is concerned for reviyah. That's the basis of what he said. But now the Gemara is going to question according to the Rabbanon. Maybe the Rabbanon agreed to that as well. Now we could say as follows: Ella beparaduma. Yeah, they're arguing only regarding a paraduma, which is yikarin, which is very, very expensive. Meaning that, yeah, it's true, the Chachamim over here by the paraduma, they are not choishish for reviyah. But why? Why are they not choishish for reviyah? Maybe only by paraduma they're not choishish because it's very expensive, and the guy realizes that if he's going to have a relation with this animal, it's going to become possible for the Yidden to use. And even though the Gemara before said Yitzrei Taikvai, but the Chachamim regarding the paraduma say that a guy will hold back his taiva in order not to lose the money. Aval b'shar kabanis, maidele, by other karbanis where it's not so expensive, over here there would be maide to Rabbi Eliezer that we're not chayshish for reviyah. It's not such a great money loss for the guy. So maybe everybody agrees that we're chayshish for reviyah. So the Gemara says it's not mistaber to say that Chachamim are only arguing regarding paraduma, because if so, the Eloha, the Tanya, going back to the Braisa that we're discussing over here, to explain who's the Tana of this Braisa, where it says, Loikche mehem behemoth lekarbon, where the Braisa says that you could buy from a guy a behemoth for a carbon, so money. Who's going to be the Tana of that Braisa? Loi Rabbi Eliezer, as Rabbi Eliezer here clearly says that you can't buy anything from a guy, not a paraduma or not any carbon, and V'lei Rabbanan. And according to what you're suggesting, it's not Rabbanan either, because you're suggesting that Rabbanan only argue regarding paraduma, because by paraduma it's so expensive, so the guy doesn't want to lose all that money. But by any other animal, by any other carbon, the guy, there is a chashash for reviyah, so you should not be allowed to buy it from the guy. So who's that price going to be? Nobody. So therefore it must be that it's the Chachamim. The Chachamim are the ones that argue with Rabbi Eliezer regarding all karbanis. And v'oid, furthermore, there's a clear brayso that says what the Chacham's opinion is. Tanya behedye, we clearly learned, my oisivu lechavroyi l'Rabbi Eliezer. What did Rabbi Eliezer's colleagues, the Chachamim, what did they answer to Rabbi Eliezer when he said that you can't buy a paraduma or any karbanis from Goyim? They quoted a pasuk. The pasuk says, Kol tzoyin kedar yikavtzu loch yalu, that you should gather all the sheep from Kedar. Rashi says Kedar is a term that refers to Yishmael, coming from the Goyim, from Yishmael. You should gather all of this and bring it, and Yalo, they should be brought as karbanis. So therefore, this pasuk proves that you could buy, and al-ratzn al-mizbechi, or the actual lashon of the pasuk, it doesn't say that lashon in the pasuk. It says al-ratzn mizbechi. So what do you see here? that the Chachamim argued regarding all karbanis, not only regarding para duma, which is very expensive, and therefore the guy is afraid of losing all that money. They were quoting a pasuk that shows that Chachamim hold that you could buy any behemoth for any carbon from a guy. So therefore, the Gemara here concludes that the pshat that Rav Pados said is correct. There's a machlokes here between Chachamim and Rav Eliezer, whether we're concerned by a guy for revia or not, and this is a machlokes regarding any carbon, regarding any animal. Okay, Ad Kan is the explanation of the machlokes, or the different various answers the Gemara gave for the contradiction we had regarding this subject, whether there's a concern of revia by a guy or not. Now the Gemara is going to focus on a detail here regarding the para duma. Says the Gemara, we brought up this opinion of para duma. What do we see here? That Ad Kan loy pligi. What's the argument here between the Chacham and Rav Eliezer according to the pshat of Rav Pados? Ela b'chashasha. When you're buying a para duma from a guy, and the shaila is, are you chayshish for the revia or not? Aval hechad devadei rava. In a case where you know for a fact that the guy had a relation with this para duma, pasla. So then the para duma, everybody chacham would agree that it's pasul. Now what can we learn from this? Shma mina, from this we can prove the para koche mizbeachi, that the para aduma has the status of a carbon that's brought in the mizbeach. The e koche beda kabayis, because if the status of the para aduma is that it's kochim, but it's not brought in the mizbeach, what happens to the para aduma? The para aduma is actually not slaughtered in the Beis Hamikdash, and the blood is not spread in the mizbeach. It's not burnt in the mizbeach at all. It's brought outside of the Beis Hamikdash on Hara Zeisim. That's opposite of El Pnei Oil Ma'id. Noichach Pnei Oil Ma'id is where you spray the blood, but it's brought outside. So if so, there would be a strong svara to say that it's not considered to be b'chlal. It's not kochim mizbeach. It's koche bedek habayis. It has the status of any other kochim that belongs to the Beis Hamikdash. But the Gemara says, if it's koche bedek habayis, mi mifsul bar revia, the fact that a guy has a relation with this animal, does it passel it of being kochim for the bedek habayis? Things that are owned by the Beis Hamikdash. Rashi says a stone, any other material, gold, silver that's owned by the that's owned by the funds of the Beis Hamikdash. The concept of revia doesn't play a role in this. It doesn't take away the ability to be makdisha to the bedek habayis. This whole concept that there's an isser to be makdish, an animal that there was a revia, is learned from the pasuk that Rashi quoted before, only regarding a carbon, where it says in the pasuk mina behema, v'loy kala behema. That's regarding a carbon, but not regarding koche bedek habayis. Yeah. So the para aduma, even though it wasn't brought on the mizbeach, so the fact that everybody agrees that the revia will passel it shows that it has a status of koche mizbeach.
But you have to have the concept of asnan zoina.
Yeah,
so
that's a little bit of a different Indian. Here, this is revia. Asnan zaina is a gift for a zaina. Similar thing. That's also a psul, also only regarding a carbon. But over here we're talking about revia, specifically regarding revia, and that is a pasuk only regarding koche mizbeach, not regarding b'chlal the funds of the Beis Hamikdash, koche bedek habayis.
So why? Because the whole avoid is outside of the Beis Hamikdash.
By paraduma, yeah, exactly. It's brought outside. What's the?
Inside the oil. I'm saying you're not allowed to do any.
The revia is not le'ol. It's not the same thing. It's a different kind of act. Yeah, it's not included in that. Okay, now what's the significance of this? There's other halachas that there are differences between koche mizbeach and koche bedek habayis. When it comes to koche mizbeach, you can't redeem koche mizbeach unless it gets a mum. Another halacha, Rashi brings this up here, the Gemara is going to mention, that when it comes to koche mizbeach, when you come to redeem it, there's a halacha called hamada v'haracha. You have to have the behemoth standing, and you have to evaluate it properly before you redeem it. This is all conditions of how you can redeem koche mizbeach. When it comes to koche bedek habayis, anything that belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, you could always redeem it. You can be paid to anything from hektish. You don't have to wait until it gets a mum, and you don't have to mamish have the same kind of evaluation properly the way it is by koche mizbeach. So what the Gemara is saying is the para aduma, based on what we see here that revia passels it, seems like this proves that it has the status of koche mizbeach, and you could only redeem it when it gets a mum, and you have to redeem it with a proper evaluation. So the Gemara answers and says, not necessarily. You could say that really a para duma is in the category of koche bedek habayis. However, regarding this detail, the revia shani para the chatas karya rachmana. The Torah uses the term chatas, so even though there's simply the term chatas means that it purifies a yid, but chatas also means that regarding this halacha it has the status of a carbon. And therefore, specifically regarding this psul of revia, it applies to the para duma. But not regarding other things though. regarding the other details that I mentioned before, that you could redeem it even without a mum and without a proper evaluation, it really is in the category of kachir bedek abayis. But specifically regarding this psul of karbanis, since it calls it a chatos, so the via will passel it. So based on this answer, the Gemara asks, if so, ela meyato tipasel b'yetze doifen. So if so, a para duma that was born yetze doifen, cesarean, C-section, it should be possible to be brought as a para duma. Why? Because regarding karbanis, a yetze doifen is possible for a carbon. Rashi here brings a pasuk in the Gemara in Pcheiris. It says shoyd a kesev. So the Gemara learns out. It says there ki yivaled. Yivaled means that it's born through the normal birth, not a C-section. So by all karbanis, yetze doifen is possible. If you're saying chatos karya rachmana, that regarding the psulim for the carbon, it has a halacha of a carbon, so why would yetze doifen not be possible for paraduma? Now, if you would say that, yeah, in fact, the yetze doifen is possible for paraduma, but we actually learned the machlekes about this. Allah Tanya, why did we learn in a brayse that says hikdisha v'yetze doifen, that a person is makdish or paraduma, which was a yetze doifen, a cesarean psula, it's possible. So the Tanakama actually is saying that it is possible. But Rab Shimon machshe, Rab Shimon says that even a yetze doifen is possible. And the Gemara over here is asking that it's not mistaver to say that Rab Shimon would argue on this drasha chatas karya rachmana. If you would say that this chatas karya rachmana is telling us that it has a status of a carbon regarding the psulim for a carbon, so then Rab Shimon would not argue with this. So how could you say that this chatas karya rachmana is the reason why we passel it for the via, and for that it should also be possible for yetze doifen? The Gemara says, maybe Rab Shimon holds that yetze doifen doesn't matter. If you would say, and I think to say, Rab Shimon l'taimeh, Rab Shimon doesn't consider yetze doifen to make any difference. Why? Because the Omar yetze doifen vlad ma'al yehu. Rab Shimon holds a birth that's C-section is the same like a regular birth. Where do we see that Rab Shimon says this? So Rashi brings that Rab Shimon says this regarding a woman that gives birth, that the halachas usually when a woman gives birth, there's different halachas of tumah, whether she gave birth to a zachar or to a nekeva, that she's tameh for a week or 2 weeks, and then there's halachas of tara, that she has dam toya for a certain amount of time. So Rab Shimon says that all those halachas that apply regarding a woman that gives birth applies whether she gave birth regularly or also a C-section birth is the same halacha applies. That's Rab Shimon's opinion. But the Chachamim disagree with Rab Shimon, and they say that if it's a C-section birth, then all these halachas do not apply. Right? So what do you see over here? Rab Shimon holds that a birth of a yetze doifen is the same like a regular birth. So therefore you could say that according to Rab Shimon, regarding kachim as well, regarding a carbon, yetze doifen is b'chalal not a psul. The Gemara says, no, that point that it says regarding a woman that gives birth does not apply to karbanis, because Va'am Rabbi Yechanan, and Rabbi Yechanan clearly said, regarding kachim, Rab Shimon agreed that a yetze doifen is possible for a carbon. It's only regarding a woman that gives birth that over there he has a pasuk where he darshans an extra pasuk that says that even a yetze doifen has the halachas like a woman that gave birth regularly. So if so, the question remains, why would Rab Shimon say that a yetze doifen would be kosher for a paraduma? If you're saying this svara of chatas karya rachmana, how would Rab Shimon argue on that? So therefore, the Gemara concludes. Again, what? A b'chor? Yeah, that's also, it's another halacha and a chanami. So therefore the Gemara concludes differently. Here the Gemara now is coming back to explain a new pshat. Why is it that by para aduma, reviyah is a psul? Even though be'emes para aduma is not kachim mizbech. It's not brought in the mizbech, it's kachim bedek abayis, but nevertheless, reviyah will passel it. Says the Gemara, the reason is something else. Not because of the lashon of chatas karya rachmana. Shani para, a para aduma. The reason why reviyah will passel it, it's because v'hayol umum paisel ba. Since we see that para aduma, any mum passels it, dvar erve, v'avoda zara nami pasel ba. So therefore, if it was used for dvar erve, for reviyah, or Avoda Zara was designated for Avoda Zara, or served as an Avoda Zara, it will also be possible, because that falls into the category of a mum. Because regarding a mum, the pasuk says ki mashchasam behem mum bam, that there's something that's a mishchasam, something that's ruined with this, and it is a mum in it. This term of mashchasam shows that even Avoda Zara and a dvar erve will passel it. Where do we see this? Because we're talking about Rabbi Shmuel says, Kol mokem shenema hashchasa. Whenever the Torah uses this term of hashchasa, that is something that is not the exact translation for the word hashchasa, when it's something that is destroyed and ruined. What ruined in what way? Einoi ela dvar erva v'avoda zara. What it refers to is the isur of arayis or avoda zara. Where do we see this? Dvar erva d'chsev. By dvar erva it says by the mabel ki hishchis kol basar as darkay ala oretz, and that referred to the immoral relations that they had. Avoda zara d'chsev pem tashchisum v'asisim lochem pesal. So therefore, the para aduma is kotche bed. It's kotche bed kabayis. It's not on the mizbech b'chlal. And the term chatos that it said before, that means that it has the koyach like a carbon chatos, but it doesn't have the halacha of. It says and the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya the saying of chatos kaya rachmana, that it has the koyach to give a very powerful kapara like a carbon chatos, and even actually more than a chatos, takes a person out of tumas meis. But not regarding the psul of revia. That's not the basis of it. The point is because it's like a mum. Since it says the term mashchasam by a mum, we know that it passes also for avoda zara and a dvar erva. So therefore, over here, v'ha para nami. So therefore, the conclusion here is regarding the paraduma as well. Hayil umum paisel ba. Since a mum passes a paraduma, dvar erva avodas kechavim pasli ba. So if it's there's a dvar erva or avoda zara, it'll also passel this avoda zara. That's the conclusion of the Gemara. Okay, the Gemara here will continue. This already goes all the way on down to the next summit up over here.